In the interest of disclosure, and so I can relax with you, we can have psychological safety, I need to tell you a few things. I feel like a cyborg. I'm an author, I have books to plug. Look, I wish they paid a mortgage, I'm no J.K. Rowling. I get a few beers out of it. When I first started, number 3, when I first started giving conference talks, I used to feel guilty if I gave an audience a talk that I'd never given before. I felt as if they weren't getting something new, something original, something, yeah. And over the years, as I started repeating talks, I started to feel guilty if I was giving an audience a talk for the first time, because, talks aren't debugged till you've given them a few times. Until you've worked out where the mistakes are on the slides, you've worked out the flow, you've worked out all the jokes, and most importantly, you've worked out the timing. So you're getting a new talk, which is great. Probably if in a couple of years' time, you'll get to see it again, in Stockholm or somewhere, and it'll be much better. That also means, number 4, on timing. When I timed this the other day with myself as a practice run, it came in slightly under 45. Shouldn't do that, should I? 45 minutes. So you need to ask me some questions at the end. I've allowed some time for questions, but you've got to have some questions. Right. Welcome. Thank you for having me in Gothenburg. I'm one of the people behind this hashtag. If any of you out there twittering, that's the hashtag. This arose a few years ago, and we fully accept it's very negative. It's really a bad thing. No, don't do this. And once we've worked with it, for me, it's grown into something else. I still have on my website, you can find it, and there's some recordings online of me giving the No Projects presentation, which is a really hardcore, thumping, down with projects, they're evil kind of presentation. Really got audiences wound up. But over the years, it's legitimate to say, well, if you don't do projects, what should you do instead? And I've cottoned onto this word, continuous. So I try to say, instead of doing projects, you do continuous stuff. It goes on and on. Projects, by definition, come to an end. Continuous, by definition, carries on. So I'd like to tell you a little about how that evolution happens and give you a bit of the why projects are not a good idea and a bit of what you should do instead. I want to take you back to time 0. C programmers, Unix programmers in the audience, you know what I'm talking about here. 1970. Because I was still in whatever passed for nappies in 1970. I'll take you back to 1970. In 1970, I'd have come here probably on a British airplane, a de Havilland Comet. Aren't they wonderful? They're fantastic modern planes. One small problem, they kept crashing. Another one crashed in Barcelona in 1970. That kind of marked the end of the Comet. 1970, of course, Tricky Dicky. Some things never change in America, do they? Dodgy presidents. Richard Nixon was president. He got elected on a promise to pull Americans out of Vietnam. Vietnam War was in full swing. In 1970, he started to pull troops out of Vietnam. Good on you, Dickie. He also invaded Cambodia. I don't think that was in his election manifesto, but that was the world in 1970. Of course, there was a World Cup in Mexico, not in Russia, and Brazil won. There's Pele in the team. We're talking about 1970. We're talking about Pele was on the football field. And of course, it was the year of Apollo 13. Again, some things don't change, do they? American spacecraft explodes. Wasn't it great yesterday? Soyuz went up, and yes, the Soyuz didn't make it, but the escape system worked. That's what really impressed me. 1970, Apollo 13. And a bit of British news for you. Edward Heath was elected Prime Minister, which is really important. Edward Heath was devoted, his life's mission was to take Britain into the common market. And he achieved this a few years later. Edward Heath took Britain into the European Union. I guess he died just in time. 1970, I choose 1970 not just because it's year zero in Unix speak, it's the year this appeared. This is the paper. This is the diagram that we've all come to hate. Winston Royce delivered his famous waterfall paper in 1970. He didn't call it waterfall, but you can guess why people started calling it waterfall. Royce summed up the way we were seeing software development then. He described the process we should follow for software development. People argue over this paper. All I can say is go and read it for yourself. Some people say it's the original Agile paper. Some people say it's the original non-Agile paper. You decide. 1970, this model, the model I was taught at university, the model many of you were taught at college, at university, comes from 1970. In 1970, we are still 1 year away from the first Intel CPU. The Intel 4004 did not appear until 1971. When it did, it had 2,300 transistors. The smartphone in your pocket probably has in excess of 6 billion transistors. This thing ran at 740 kilohertz. Not megahertz, not gigahertz, kilohertz. And it did 92,000 instructions per second. But that was still a year away in 1970. In 1970, this was state-of-the-art, an IBM mainframe. Only in 1970, the world was black and white. The IBM Model 195 was launched in 1970. 10 MIPS of processor power, although they called it 10 kips. 4 mega RAM. I was surprised they were so powerful when I looked this up. You programmed COBOL on OS 360. You had an IMS hierarchical database. Again, some things don't change. Rental price, $2,500 in 1970 money. That is 1.25 in 2016 prices or 1.75 in 2018 prices. These things were expensive. Why 2016? Because in 2016, I bought my children one of these. 4,744 MIPS. That's 474 times as much processing power. What's that? 256 times as much memory. It runs Linux. You can run Python, Scala, Ruby. Open COBOL if you really want it. In 1970, there was no open source. Nobody went home of an evening and programmed open source on their home-based mainframe. This did not happen. You can choose relational or hierarchical databases. And here, to buy outright, $35 US. This is the important thing here. Because in this world, CPU cycles are expensive. Planning, desk-based planning, paper planning, analysis, Gantt charts, and all that stuff is cheap. An hour of your time on the machine is hideously expensive. Better you use an hour of your time doing something with paper and you save those CPU cycles for something that's needed. The world we live in today, CPU cycles are dirt cheap. Planning is expensive. An hour of your time spent doing analysis, doing Gantt charts, doing planning, writing a requirements document burns up an awful lot more CPU cycles. If you want the figures, an hour of mainframe time, 36 million instructions. Spend the same hour today, that's 17 million, what we used to call the British billion instructions. This is an order of magnitude more. As a result, planning, which made sense to do lots of upfront planning and analysis here because CPU time was hideously expensive. In this world, CPU cycles are dirt cheap. Exploit them, use them. If you are working in a mainframe environment, if you're programming COBOL on green screens with a hierarchical database, then you're probably best sticking with a waterfall process. But most of us live in this world. You see, there's a model of technology change you see again and again and again. When we get a new technology, people use the new technology to do the same thing, but do it faster. Remember? Microwave ovens came in. We use it to cook the same food, just faster. Yeah? We went over to shipping containers. Remember Gothenburg docks? Well, probably you don't remember, but your parents remember Gothenburg docks before shipping containers. I bet it was really lively, like my hometown of Liverpool. And then the shipping container came in. Whoa! Much faster loading and unloading ships. We used the new technology to do things faster. But with time, we changed the processes. Instead of just loading and unloading ships as shipping containers, the shipping containers are loaded at the manufacturers, and they go through the dock system, and they appear at the retailers. And it also means that we can rethink our entire supply chains. You can have parts going from Sweden to France to Germany, back to Sweden, and then over to the UK to be sold. Before you had shipping containers, you never did that. It didn't make sense to keep putting them on and off old-style cargo ships. In the first instance, shipping containers allow you to load and unload ships faster. Then you get process change, and people learn to exploit that technology to do things in different ways, to adopt new processes. There are some economists who say the introduction of a shipping container, which was also about 1970, the Ideal X was 56, about 1970, there's a lot of catch on. There are some economists who say the introduction of container shipping has done more to promote world trade and globalization and all the free trade deals in the world. Donald Trump and Brexit are going to test this hypothesis. You be your own judge. So, we get new technology, we do the same thing, we do it faster. And then we change the processes to exploit the new technology. And then we go for another round of innovation. Those new processes allow us to reconceive the way we are doing things. We can change what we do, and then we can get more innovations, new technologies, new processes, new whatever else, and you repeat. New technology, faster, process change brings out more benefits. Electricity is a brilliant example. This picture, I believe, but not quite sure where it came from, comes around the turn of the 20th century. So the 20th century came in. Factories only existed since about the early 1700s. Originally, a factory like this, power was up there. Power in the first factories came from a water wheel. Later, we had steam engines. You get movement. The movement is transmitted along this bar to the machines. You've got physical movement. The machines here are connected to the bar by this belt. All machines need to have physical proximity to this moving bar so they can get power through the belt. Because they're all tied to the bar dictates how fast all the machines can go. They all go about the same speed. And because they're coming through this belt, which originally were leather belts, sticks together, there's a limit to how fast you can go because those belts break. And when the belt breaks, you have to stop the entire factory and fix the belt. So your entire factory layout, your entire processes are organized around that bar and ensuring your factory keeps running. At the time this photo is taken, electricity is coming in. See this gentleman here? He's doing some work with a hand tool. Look at that electric cable. Electricity comes in. Electricity allows you to have motion and machines pretty much anywhere you like. You're not tied to a physical bar. You have these cables which can go many places and can bend. You can now get power tools. In the first instance, we used electricity to run our machines faster, to do the same thing in a faster way. Over time, you can rethink how you lay the factory out. Over time, you can change manufacturing processes because you're not tied to this bar. The early factories, particularly in the US, General Motors and Ford in particular, they started in the world of the bar. Their machines producing the early cars would come down to physical motion, probably from a steam engine. And then electricity came in. You know, Japan conveniently had all their factories flattened in about 1944-45. When Japan reindustrialized, they just went to electricity. Arguably, the movement to lean manufacturing, we all know lean's superior and lean's better and all that. Arguably, the move to lean manufacturing is a result of electrification. And the reason it happened in Japan was that Japan got to rebuild its factories, and they could design their factories from the word go based around electricity, not around physical motion. And again, lean wouldn't be lean if you didn't use electricity. If all your machines were still tied to a physical bar, you couldn't think about bottlenecks the way you think about bottlenecks in lean. Technology change allows you to rethink and change the processes. So, this is dead simple, this next bit. If you're in 1970 or 71 and you change your technology to 2018 technology, perhaps you also want to change your process. I've given up on the Agile manifesto and all that other stuff about why Agile is better. It boils down to one thing. When you change your technology, you change your process. If you're still in this world, by all means stay with this process. I don't want to have that conversation. If you're in this world, your process should be something a bit more like this. Oh, one more thing. The Project Management Institute of America was founded in 1968. I don't want to pick on PMI. They're actually quite good compared to the British equivalent. The project management came of age in the late 60s. Project management itself didn't really exist before, what, 1940? Maybe even 1950. And then we had things like the Manhattan Project. That was a great success, wasn't it? The American Polaris Project, not to be confused with the British Polaris Project, which, funnily enough, is where I learned about Gantt charts and PERT charts when I found these funny documents in my dad's papers. Planning, programming, and budgeting system. You've probably never heard of this. This was what the Pentagon was introduced in the early 1960s. Robert McNamara introduced this system to ensure the Pentagon planned for the next war. They planned for the next war, they worked out what they needed, they set a budget for it, they had strategic goals, strategic aims, and they were going to win that war because they had a superior planning system. Yes! They were so set to fight a tank battle on the plains of Germany. When those Russian tanks invaded Germany, the Pentagon was there, ready. What was the war they ended up fighting? Somebody once said, one of the generals, that planning, programming, and budgeting system died in the paddy fields of Vietnam. The American military in the early 60s was perfectly adapted to tank battles in Europe. Wasn't the war they fought. Project management came around in the 1960s. Project management was instituted as a result of those learnings. This is a project, by the way. This is the official definition. When I talk about projects, I know some of you are thinking source code, applications. I'm talking about the PMI definition. A temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product. Cool about unique products, if you want a product that already exists in the software world, Control-C, Control-V. We're all about uniqueness. Temporary is the interesting word. Somebody was just telling me in the last break that their last project lasted 7 years. 7 years. Is that temporary in your world? Where does temporary start and end? You know, as Keynes said, in the long run, we're all dead. The idea of a project is you start, you do your project, and you stop. Bring a team together, have them do something, disperse them. Yes? Time and time again, what you see is project is followed by project, is followed by project, is followed by project. A never-ending stream of projects. What is temporary about this? What is temporary about saying, we've got a team here, they'll do this, at the end we'll disband them, oh, we won't, we'll fudge that bit. An awful lot of organizations use the project language, they use the model of project development, but actually they're faking it. They're continually developing the same thing. And successful software continues. You'd all love Microsoft Office to come to an end, wouldn't you? But every time Microsoft releases a new version of Office, they get a great boost to their profits. Yeah? Is every issue of Office a new project? It's a product. It exists. So anyway, 1970, waterfall model, projects building. In the last 10, 15 years, we've made great strides away from that process model, which was the waterfall model. But we're still using projects. If anything, we're using more projects than we were 15 years ago. But projects are themselves the result of the pre-microchip era. Projects are the result of 1950s and 1960s thinking. Shouldn't we be thinking about changing the process model around how we develop stuff? Not just 2-week iterations, but more. And so it was that in about 2013, myself and these other ugly people here, I apologize, it just happened they were all white males. We started saying heretical things on Twitter. Twitter's another great example, isn't it? You get Twitter, we've used it to formulate new ideas. We started saying things like, projects are a big batch. Here's a lot of stuff we want to build, and we're going to build it. And we started saying, big batch is bad, and big batch increases risk. If this is your requirements document, and success is delivering all of that, you go a little bit wrong, and you lose the whole thing. That's a big risk. You start a smaller project and something goes wrong, there's less at risk. Projects are inherently big batch. They're riskier. Software has diseconomies of scale. If you've ever seen me speak before, you've probably seen my milk slide. When you buy milk, large cartons of milk are cheaper than the same amount of milk in small cartons. 4 1-litre cartons of milk costs more than 1 4-litre carton of milk. If you bought software the way you buy milk, you would find that 4 1-litre cartons of software were cheaper together than 1 4-litre carton of software. Lots of things in software work better in the small. Small teams are more productive per person than large teams. You all know that. Small pieces of work flow through your system, get to the end, and deliver value faster than large pieces of work. Fixing a bug or adding a feature to a 10,000-line program is an order of magnitude easier than fixing a bug in a 100,000-line program, and that is an order of magnitude easier than fixing a bug in a 1,000,000-line program. Whenever in software you feel the urge to go large and exploit economies of scale, stop and run in the other direction. Small, 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 small. Projects damage quality. We talked a little bit before about deadlines. I'm all for deadlines. We're humans, we respond very well to deadlines, but deadlines have a negative effect. We tend to cut quality to meet our deadline. A programmer here, you ever had a project manager come up to you and say, it doesn't need to be perfect, just good enough, and a little bit of you dies. In the project model, because we fool ourselves about its end date, and we don't care about what happens after that. Once we hit the end date, the world ends as far as we're concerned, we deliver. We cut quality. But in reality, after that end date, there's another project, and development continues. We cut quality today, we shoot ourselves in the foot for tomorrow. Projects damage quality. Software's permanent. Projects by their nature are temporary. Successful software continues. Unsuccessful software goes away. Who cares about unsuccessful software? Successful software continues. Microsoft Office is a great example. When will Microsoft Office be done? When can they disband the team? Project planning is control. Having people plan a project, draw up a list of requirements, set out a Gantt chart, schedule things in, allocate work to future sprints, that's an act of control. The more planning you do, the less autonomy you are letting the team have. Requirements don't work. We've tried writing them down. They continue to change. People don't read big documents. People misunderstand them. Teams should get into the work and find out what's needed as they do the work. We can't tell you up front what you want. We don't really know. Projects destroy value because they lead to later delivery. If we're building a project with 100 features, every one of those features could be delivered when it's ready and could start earning that money when it's ready. If you batch them all together and wait till the end, you've lost money. If you've got two projects, Project A and Project B, they both have the similar set of features. Yeah? You are a good Agile team. You work in business value order. You work through Project A. You're halfway through it. You delivered half the features. What you've got left is the lower value features. You've got Project B with a similar profile of things to do. Why would you continue doing the low value features from Project A when Project B is waiting to be done with more high value features? Thinking in projects deprives us of value. There's a thing called commitment escalation. Once you start spending money, time, reputation on something, when things go wrong, it's more difficult for you to walk away from it. There's countless examples, but the example I normally cite is a few years ago, the BBC in London cancelled a project when it had spent £40 million. The BBC ran a project for 3 or 4 years. They spent £40 million. They had nothing to show for it. They had a new top boss, Director General they're called. He came in and he cancelled it. How do you spend £40 million and have nothing to show for it? Doesn't somebody notice when you spend $1 million, 5 million, 10 million? The project had been restarted 3 times. And each time you can imagine somebody goes to the next layer up and says to them, it's not going well. Can I have another 5 million to try and iron out the problems? And the person they're asking gave them 5 million 6 months ago. If they cancel it now, then what they're saying is they shouldn't have given them 5 million 6 months ago. The more you do, the more you invest money, time, your reputation. This can be career threatening. The more difficult it is to walk away from something when it's not working. And the more time we spend trying to plan a project and organize a project before we start coding the damn thing, the more committed we are. And when we see the risks, we're more difficult to walk away. You get this commitment escalation. People won't walk away from it. I won't even mention Brexit. And project success criteria. Do you see the problem? It's there, black and white, there's the problem. Where's the money? Our projects are measured against schedule, budget, quality, and/or features. We don't measure against what money they're earning. You can do a large project, deliver a lot of features on schedule, on quality, put it out there in the market, nobody buys it. Okay? Projects lead to a thing called goal displacement. Because organizations assume that the project tells them how long and how much money and how much benefit, they chase after these proxy goals when really there's another goal which might be earning money. It might be feeding hungry people. It might be addressing cyclones, hurricanes, whatever. But people get hung up on the project success criteria, not the benefit they're really trying to deliver. So, I've convinced you, projects are a bad idea. If you want to hear more of this rant, that's the book to buy. And now you're thinking, okay, I've drank the Kool-Aid. What do I do? So I set about trying to answer this question. It eventually became this book, but I kept coming back to 2 things. One was that, let me just get this right. One was that projects are temporary. We aim for continuous improvement. Everyone in favor of continuous improvement? Raise your hand. Okay. Except when we get to the end of the project, we throw it all away. Okay? Continuous flow, that's another great lean term. Continuous flowing stuff through. And continuous delivery, thank you, Dave Farley, Jez Humble. Continuous delivery, yes. Successful software lasts, it grows, it matures. If we use it, we will want changes. The world around it will change. The second thing I kept coming back to was that as much as business talks about change, and we all love change, what we really want is longevity. What we want to be here next year, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. And this is very easy to see. Companies like Woolworths, Saab, local company, aren't they? Lehman Brothers. Are these the kind of companies you want to emulate? Or are companies like this the ones you want to emulate? Barclays Bank, 1690. A small Liverpool company called Swire, you've probably not heard of. They own Cathay Pacific and most of Hong Kong, 1816. Procter & Gamble in the US, 1837. Shell, Royal Dutch Shell, give it its proper name, 1890. They have longevity. Which type of business do you want to work for? Businesses say they want to make money, they want to make profits and all the rest of it, but really, businesses are just another organic element. They want to survive, you know? We want longevity. We may need to change to get it. And today, we live in the age of digital business. For me, and for most of you, probably scratch your heads when someone says digital. You can't think, we can just remove the word and the sentence stays the same, because we've lived in a digital world for so long. But when somebody who's not a software person comes along and starts talking about digital, what they're saying is their world now looks like our world. Their world now exists on phones, on web browsers, in GitHub and all of that. Their world's changed because it's become digitized. Yeah. If you are a digital business, why would you stop developing your technology? That'd be like going to a shop and everything's sold out, and the shop manager says, "Success! We sold everything in the shop." Enhancing technology is business as usual. Business as usual is not a dirty word. If you are a digital business, the thing you normally do is enhance and change your technology. It is not a project that happens somewhere else, that happens and stops. It is the way you live. It is fundamental to your business. It's continuous. And this is everywhere. John Deere, they make tractors and quad bikes and things like that. They spent $300 million buying a Silicon Valley startup, which will allow them to position tractors more effectively in fields. Farming is becoming digital. In the UK, we have a company called Rentokil. Guess what they do? Their rat traps are now Internet of Things devices. Their rat traps report kills back to their headquarters, and they can send out extra rat catchers if they're needed. Which means that instead of being called out when people notice lots of rats in old Gothenburg town, and they have to send lots of rat killers, they now get a message from their trap saying, "Hey, there's more rats in Gothenburg. We just should dispatch some more rat people there." They can deal with rat and mouse and other problems more easily because they're a wired digital company. Technology, it's changing our entire world, continuously digital. Do you think any of these companies would say, "It's done, it's finished, our software is complete"? Would Airbnb one day say, "No more changes"? What happened if Uber stopped developing their software? I know Uber's a company we really should hate, aren't they? But they're so damn good at their job. They keep developing their software. What would happen if Uber stopped? I'll tell you what would happen. Their competitors would catch up and overtake them. There are other taxi companies that have apps. They aren't anywhere near as good as Uber. But if Uber don't keep enhancing theirs, the others will catch up. Netflix. In the UK, this online supermarket, Ocado. In the UK, their an online supermarket, but I think when they arrive in Sweden, they're just supplying the technology. Outside of the UK, they're just a software company that happens to sell software for supermarkets to become digital. Why would any of these companies stop developing their products? They don't. It doesn't make sense to say this is a development effort that happens here and it stops there. This is continuous. This is the nature of digital business. Digital business means we are technology. The business is technology and the technology is the business. Hence I got the name continuous digital. If digital business is to last, it needs to keep that technology fresh. It needs to keep going. The business is the technology. How do you separate Uber from its technology? Is Uber a technology company or is Uber a taxi company? Is Uber a mediator? Is Uber, what the hell is Uber? It's a type of company which is both. It's a hybrid. Yes. How am I doing on time? Oh, 10 minutes, I've got to speed up. The main points. We need to dump the governance model which says we're measuring against schedule, budget, percentage done and all the rest of it. Lots of your organizations now claim to be doing Agile. Some are doing it very well. Some have reached the shining city on the hill. Others are... But if you're using a governance model which is still tied to on schedule, on budget, percentage done and all of that, you've got it wrong. That governance system is not fit for purpose if you've got an Agile team. Agile teams are continually discovering new requirements, continually delivering products. So we need a governance system that is continual. We need to start, when we set something new, we start building it and we start the analysis at the same time. We do not say, ooh, we're going to think, what do people want from smartphones? Maybe they want 140, 280 character messaging service. We're not going to try and work out what it is everybody wants. We're going to start trying to build something and put it out there. Prototypes, proof of concepts, experiments, call it what you will. We're going to optimize for lots of small. Get away from big batches and doing big things. Lots of small. Get efficient at small. Products over projects. Products have longevity. Microsoft Office keeps going. Microsoft Office keeps renewing. Microsoft now sell it on subscription. Part of the deal you make with Microsoft when you buy Office 365 is that it will be better next month than it is today, and it'll be better in a year's time. Business over products. Digital business is dependent on digital products. Digital products are software. Your business is dependent on software. What? Okay, Mrs. Miggins' pie shop down there probably isn't. As long as they take contactless, they're cool. But the businesses you work for and growth businesses are overwhelmingly digital or need to become digital pretty damn quick. Teams are the means of production. We base work about teams. Or for those of you who claim to be using the Spotify model, squads. Okay? Your team is like, I was thinking of it like a cell production, another term from Lean. There's a great book came out of Kyoto, another Japanese company called Amoeba Management. Go and read it, it's difficult. But your teams are the means of production. Your teams are like a cell. They are stable. That doesn't mean they're static. People come and go, people get seconded to other teams, but teams are stable. Teams don't get broken up. Teams will grow and teams will shrink. Teams continue. Teams are responsible for what they build. They're responsible for delivering value, business value, discovering what needs doing, listening to what people want, working out what will deliver the most value, because they're constrained by resources. They get to decide what they're going to deliver, which means they're multi-skilled, coders and testers and business analysts and everyone else. And business analysts and testers, by the way, are swapping places. BAs and product managers used to lead, then you coded, then you tested. They're swapping around. Particularly BDD, testers come in at the start to work out what we're going to be testing here, and analysts come along after you've built the product to work out whether it delivered any value and who's using it. Regular deliveries, continuous delivery, at least every 2 weeks. If you aren't releasing a new product every 2 weeks. Please don't tell me you're agile. Teams are part of the business. We've got to get rid of any division. Can you imagine if Uber said, well, there's all those smelly developers over there, or Spotify, better local example. It's Spotify, you have the business people in Stockholm, you have the coders in Cheap. Where's Cheap in Sweden? Yes. The teams have all the skills. They don't call out to other teams. I like to call the teams BizTech, business and technology. Someone recently talked to me about BizDevOps, which is just too much of a mouthful. BizTech, it's business people, people who understand how the business works, what customers want, and technology teams. You start, if you're doing something completely new, you start with an MVP, a minimally viable team. Do not start building a minimal viable product with anything more than a minimal viable team, because the people on the team will find work to do. You start with a minimal viable team. If it's successful, it grows. If it's not successful, can it? And in time, you might split it. And in time, you might shrink it back, you might merge it with other teams, you might close it. Start with a minimally viable team, and a minimal viable team probably means 2, maybe 3 people, and within those 2 or 3 people, you've got technology skills and you've got business-facing analysis type skills. It may be a techie and a BA, or it may be a couple of techies who can do a bit of ad hoc product management, or whatever combination, all the skills. Try it, push it out there, see how it goes. If it's not successful, cancel it, throw it away. Please don't try and tell me you're doing a minimal viable product and you've got a project plan, because the project plan could be invalidated by a minimal viable product. If it doesn't sell, who cares about the project plan? Don't waste your time with it. CPU cycles are cheap. JFDI, just do it. Put it out there and see what happens. Oh yeah, there's my summary. Business is technology and technology is the business. Optimize for small and manage for continuity. I've got a few minutes for questions, and of course you can buy the books.
All right, just a reminder to ask for the microphone. Oh, right, before we got started, I had a question. Who buys 4 liters of milk?
I'm a bad European. In the UK, people still talk about pints and miles. And you can either buy a 1-pint carton of milk, a 2-pint or a 4-pint, which is cunningly labelled with some odd number of litres. So I did a bit of a translation, which is imperfect.
It makes a lot more sense. Parents with teenagers was the answer, apparently. All right, questions?
I've stunned them.
This Amoeba model, you said there were a book.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of the book?
Amoeba Management. It's a rather obscure book. You can find on Amazon and other places. It came out a few years ago. Some of you remember Kiosia. They used to make a lot of printers. They do other stuff as well. But they built up this whole amoeba model where every team is effectively a mini business.
All right, I think that makes it fika time. Oh, we have a thank you bag.
Thank you bag, yes.
Thank you.